And thanks for staying with us. Let's bring you an update from COP27 taking place in Egypt. Now, a cross-section of civil societies at the ongoing United Nations Climate Summit in Egypt staged a protest demanding an end to fossil gas and inappropriate energy systems in Africa. They say cost-effective renewable energy is the fastest and best way to end energy exclusion of nearly 600 million Africans and meet the needs of its people. They are also calling on African leaders to speak with a common voice in demanding rapid transition to people-centered renewable energy for the continent and the world.
But our transition to where? To more devastation, to more destruction, to more suffering.
We as African people and African communities no longer want investment in fossil fuels, and specifically this dash for gas in Africa, where we have seen governments from Europe, fossil fuel companies from Europe taking up new gas projects in Africa. These gas projects are not meant to solve the energy poverty in Africa, where 600 million people do not have access to energy, but it is meant to feed.
For more discussions, it's the Executive Director, Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, Akinbode Olufemi. He joins me from Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Good to have you join us.
Good afternoon.
I saw in one of those banners there, Don't Gas Africa. Talk to us about these concerns on the dash for gas in Africa and its implications.
Well, this afternoon, I used the parable of pipeline Africa out of existence. What do we basically mean by that? When you look at the recent news following the Ukraine-Russia war, there's been a renewed demand for fossil fuel in Africa. Nigerians signed the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project. There is a transatlantic gas pipeline project. There is the East African pipeline project. And when you look at the map of Africa, you find out that all these pipelines are looking towards where? Towards Europe. And basically, these pipelines are, drawing away the natural resources, go to say fossil fuel out of Africa. But in return, Africa has what? Polluted land, destroyed communities, destroyed ecosystem, and of course, the bigger issue that we are talking about, which is climate change. Africa being the least polluted, the least contributor to pollution in the world, and then being the biggest in terms of the impact of climate change. And we're basically saying now that the rush for gas is all over everywhere in Africa. Do not gas us out of existence. Do not burn Africa out of existence. That's exactly what we're saying.
And very interesting points you make there, because one wonders if we're already at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of the just the effect of this. We take the heat of climate change impact without even the gas flare, without being the greatest emitters. Imagine if we then gas Africa, what will happen to us? But it does also seem that we do not have a specific template for Africa. Just away from all that has been said in this COP27, how do you think that African leaders should collaborate out of all that has been said from COP27?
See, the debate around here now, it's about we're moving from commitment to action. And when you're moving from, usually at COP, we're talking about ambitions, NDCs, and the rest of them. But of course, a lot of commitments were made in Glasgow at COP26. And now we're saying, okay, let's look at all those commitments that were made. So how do we get them into action? In order to get them to action, you need finance, you need resources for adaptation, etc. So the issue of how to finance climate change is a very big topic here, and the issue of loss and damage. First is that Africa is not begging. We are asking for reparation for the historical damage that has been done to our environment, that the development in the West was built on destroying Africa's continent, and they also was that historical fund to be able to move, to be able to adapt, and to be able to respond to climate change. Those are the conversations that are having now. We need to look at the entire global finance infrastructure. When the West is talking to us, let's say Africans, about climate change, who are the people making investment again on our continent? When you look at investment in gas infrastructure across the African continent, they are basically being bankrolled by the big banks in the US, the big banks in UK, and of course the big banks in France. And we are now saying that rather than, as I said earlier, gas was out of existence, Africa has about 39% potential for renewable energies on the continent. They could put those resources in those renewables and as well fund our adaptation and climate change response. So the biggest discussion, it's about loss and damage, it's about reparation on climate injustices that have been foisted on us. Unfortunately, while this is gaining ground, it does seem that we might not be able to get some concrete action in terms of commitment of the resources that Africa needs. That's why African leaders need to come together. They need to speak with one voice. They need not to be divided. But again, while the West is talking about climate change, they again funding investment. So the African continent itself
and also just what you said earlier. Sorry to interrupt you. Just very important to collaborate even more on renewable energy and move away from fossil fuel. Thank you so much for talking to us, Executive Director, Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, Akinbode Olufemi.
Thank you so much.